This is the 2022 Kia Seltos EX Premium, and it's powered by two different engine choices. Steve here, Cars with Steve, and before I teach you a little bit more about this vehicle, I want to give a huge shout out and a thank you to Durham Kia for giving me access to this vehicle to shoot the video for you today. Check down in the description below for their contact details. Now this is going to be a basic walk around, going through some of the basics, looking underneath the hood, cargo dimensions, and things like that. If you're looking for an in-depth walk around, specifically looking at how that media screen works and other things, check down in the description below because I've put together a comprehensive video on that as well. But let's dive into it, have a little bit of fun, and see what the 2022 Seltos has to offer. Now, starting off with some exterior styling, the Seltos has 5 available trim level choices, which means we've got a series of different tires and rims that are available for the vehicle. Size-wise, they're going to be anywhere between a 16 up to an 18 inch, again depending on the trim level choice that you're after. Looking at the EX Premium, this specific one has 17-inch rubber on it. As we start to move forward, we've got our beautiful LED headlamps. On the lower trim levels, it's going to be a halogen headlamp, and then we've also got our fog lamps a little bit further down. Now, when it comes down to the actual drivetrain of the vehicle, depending on which trim level you're looking at, you might be all-wheel drive, you might be front-wheel drive. The majority of the Seltos lineup is going to be all-wheel drive, and it's an intelligent all-wheel, but we also do have the option of locking it out into our permanent four-wheel drive, so that all-wheel drive permanent as well. So rather than letting the vehicle determine if it should be front-wheel drive, what's going on with the power, we can lock it out instead, so we've got that four-wheel drive all the time. Now, taking a peek underneath the hood of the vehicle. So first thing I want to point out, I love the Seltos badge in the front of this thing. I think it pops and it does look very, very sharp. Contrasts nicely with that grille in the front there as well. I think it looks unbelievably sharp. As we hop underneath, so engine choices for the Seltos, we've got 2 choices, and that's going to be the same for Canada and the US. It's either a 2-liter naturally aspirated, so a 4-cylinder, like what we're looking at here, and there also is the optional 1.6-liter turbocharged engine, specifically in the SX Turbo version of the vehicle. From a power perspective, this 2-liter is going to be able to push out 146 horsepower and 132 pound-feet of torque, while the 1.6-liter turbocharged is going to push out 175 horsepower and 195 pound-feet of torque. So plenty of power when it comes down to it. Now, we do have easy access to a few things, so we can easily top up our washer and our coolant. We can easily check our oil, and we've also got easy access to the battery as well. Now, taking a peek at the key fob of the vehicle. So on the very bottom, we've got our Kia logo there, which new logo I love the look of. Towards the front of the fob, we've got our lock button, our unlock button, as well as our horn or our panic alarm. Now, on top of that, on the very bottom, we also do have our emergency access key. So we can just crank this thing out if we ever need to get access to the vehicle and the fob has died. Now, one of the cool things is that we do have the option of remote starting through our cell phone, or we can also just press and hold on the fob. So we're going to make sure that the door is locked first, and then we're just going to press and hold this button. As you can see, remote start is now there. In order to cancel remote start, we're just going to press that button again once, and remote start is now canceled. Now, in order to get into the trunk of the vehicle, so if we look at the fob itself, along the side there, we don't actually have a trunk release button. So it's actually a manual process inside of the vehicle. So what we're going to do inside of the vehicle, as you can see there, we've got our Kia logo. Underneath, we're just going to press that button there, and that's going to unlock, and we can just lift this thing up. So one of the cool things is that we do have this cargo cover. So this protector cover lets us know that we can kind of make sure that anything that's underneath there is safe. Popping this thing out is very easy. All we're going to do is literally just lift out both sides, and we're just going to push in, rotate, and pull out. Let's have a peek at the cargo dimensions. So cargo dimensions for the vehicle are going to be showing up. So as you can see there, we do have quite a little bit of width and depth towards the vehicle. Now, one nice thing is that we're 60-40 split, so 60 driver, 40 passenger, so we can fold down one side or the other if we wanted to. Now, folding the seats down is very straightforward. Along the back of both the seats, so on the driver passenger side, there's a little latch. We're just going to crank that one up, and we can literally just pop these seats forward. So I'm going to do it to both. Here, now take a peek at the difference in the cargo dimensions when we have that second row folded down. So we get quite a little bit more depth when it comes down to it. So that's one good thing to know. Now, one other thing to point out is that the measurements that you're seeing on screen, it's from the very bottom towards the loading area. So very top to bottom there. And the reason why is because if you've got a box that's bigger, you're not going to be able to fit it in. But if you're stacking some things, if we go from the very bottom to the very top, we've got a couple extra inches of space. Those few extra inches matter. And we also have the option of taking this cover out. So we can take it out and there's a second tray. So we can lower it down a little bit more. And when we have it lower, we get a couple extra inches in the bottom as well. So if we're storing even more things, we've got way more flexibility when it comes down to it. And same thing, this thing can come out completely if we really wanted to. And we can get about an extra half an inch or so roughly more when we do that. Now as we hop inside the back, so taking a peek along the left-hand side, we don't have anything there. We've got a tiny little bit of storage space on both the left and the right side. And then this is going to be the clip for that actual cargo shade there. And moving back, as I mentioned, this whole thing comes out, but when we lift up, we've got our mini spare tire there. We can slide this whole tray out, and we've got our jack there as well. Now, taking a peek at some standard technology, we are always going to have that backup camera inside this vehicle. Outside of that, we won't have the reverse sensing system inside of this, but we do have the lane keeping system as well as the blind spot system. So lane keeping system, same thing, might be available in your trim level. Same thing with the blind spot system. Blind spot system will work two different ways, either just the warning or it's actually got the avoidance system as well to help pull you back into your lane. Now, filling up fuel inside of the vehicle is a very straightforward process, and it is a locked cap, which I think is brilliant. In order to open this thing up, just along our driver's side door, we've got a little button there, and we're just gonna pull that thing up in order to open this thing up. And as you can see there, we are a capped system as well. So when it comes down to fuel quality, regular 87 gas is all you need to use. That's a minimum manufacturer's recommendation, regardless of whether you're looking at the 2-liter or the 1.6 turbo. All right, now, as we hop into the second row, so I've got the driver's seat set up for somebody 6 feet tall. I'm 6 feet tall, and I still have a nice amount of knee room and a good amount of foot space. Up overhead with me sitting back, I've got about 3 inches of head space as well, so plenty of space back here, which is great. Now, one thing to note, these seats are locked into place, so we can't move them forwards, backwards. We can't adjust the backrest either. Depending on the trim level of the vehicle you're looking at, you might or you might not have a pocket in behind the passenger side seat. We're never gonna have one behind the driver's side. Moving into the back of the seat itself, we do have cup holders there as well. As you can see, so cup holders, click it, lock it back into place. As we look behind the armrest, we do have a little storage area, so a little cubby hole there, and we also have another USB port, so we can power some things up if we need to. Looking up overhead, we can also control our cabin lighting. We've got a handle as well as a little hook in the back. Now, taking a peek along our driver's side door. So we've got a button on the outside there. We can press that in order to be able to unlock or lock the door. And then hopping inside. So driver's side door there, we've got a nice look when it comes down to it. Buttons along the very top are going to let us control our side view mirrors, and we've got our basics for our window control. Moving down along the driver and passenger side, we also do have a cup holder and a little bit of storage space. Just to the left-hand side of the steering wheel, so we can either increase or decrease the brightness of the cluster screen. We've got our engine start-stop button, so that's the one that's potentially going to kill power to the engine if we're stopped for an extended period of time. We've got our lane keeping button, and then we've also got our traction control, so we can turn that system on or off if we want to. Now, adjusting the driver's seat inside of the Seltos might be a manual process, might be a power process, again, depending on which trim level of the vehicle you're looking at. Now, if it's manual, lever in between our legs, but inside of the power is really cool because we've got a couple of toggles along the side. We can use the first one to go forwards, backwards, up, and down. Next one over is going to be for the backrest, so we can go backwards and forwards with that one. And then we've got another button for our lumbar support. So it's two-way power for the lumbar, but it is comfortable to give us a little bit of extra stability in our lower back. Now, one thing to point out, when the seat is all the way back and all the way down, back, it's still going, there we go, okay. All the way back, all the way down, like, look at this. I've got tons of knee room, tons of foot room. Up overhead, I've got about, ooh, what's that, like 4 inches of headspace roughly. So if you're taller, you could definitely fit inside of this vehicle. Now, one thing to note, this one does have the sunroof. So if we get an option, one of the lower trims that does another roof, it'll give us about an extra inch or so roughly of headspace up overhead. So definitely one thing to think about. In order to be able to adjust the steering wheel, it's going to be a manual process across the entire vehicle lineup. So just by our left knee, we've got a little lever there. We're just gonna crank that down, and it's telescopic, so we can go in, out, up and down. Once you've got that perfect position, click it, lock it back into place. Ooh, okay. Now, hopping inside the vehicle, so first impressions, this thing looks really, really sharp. Like, I love the new Kia logo. They did a great job on the redesign. Now, this part of the video is just going to be a quick walk around explaining some of the basics of the steering wheel as well as that media screen. If you're looking for a more in-depth walk around and how all this stuff works, check down in the description below because I've put together a comprehensive video. But let's look at some of the basics. So we have a little button along the top left-hand side of the steering wheel, and that's going to be for a few things. So we can use our voice in order to make phone calls, change radio stations, things like that. If we had our phone connected through Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, we would also have the flexibility of using either Google or our Siri assistant instead by pressing that button, which is kind of cool. We've got our mode button, which can change between different modes. We can answer or hang up on a phone call. We can adjust our presets, and we've also got a volume rocker there as well. Along the right-hand side, we can switch between different pages inside of the instrument cluster screen, and this specific version of the Seltos also has the adaptive cruise, so that smart cruise system. That smart cruise system is literally that. It's a smart cruise, so it's a set it and forget it cruise control. You set it, let's say 100 kilometers an hour on the highway. If the car in front of you slows down, yours is automatically going to brake. If they pick up speed or get out of the way, yours will resume that set speed again. So really great system. If you've never used it before, I honestly just recommend giving it a try, because once you really figure out how to use the adaptive cruise, I don't think you're ever going to go back to regular cruise control again, if your vehicle supports it. But a few other things to point out. We've got our lane centering system, so that's the one that's literally going to keep us in our lane as we go, and we've got a distance indicator, so how close or how far are we away from the vehicle that's in front of us. We've got our left turning stick. We can flash our high beams if we want to, and then we can also figure out what's going on with the actual running lamp. So we've got a few different settings there. Along the right side, we can figure out what's going on with our windshield wiper, and we can also flick on the wiper for the rear as well. So very straightforward. Now, as we move over, I did mention this one is push button start. When we get into that media screen, so a lot of flexibility when it comes down to the screen itself. So if your vehicle does not have factory navigation, don't worry about it, because we still do have the option of using either Google Maps, Apple Maps, or Waze by connecting through Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. But we've got some great features and a lot of flexibility when it comes down to it. As we move down, we've got a volume rocker. We've got some basic buttons as well to jump between different screens inside of this media screen, and we can also tune. But honestly, using the tuning rocker that way is probably the least effective method, because we can just press the button on the steering wheel, and we can use that in order to be able to change songs, radio stations, things like that if our vehicle supports it. So really, really great feature. Moving down a tiny little bit more, we've got our basics. So this is actually a really cool system for our climate control. So it's a mix of like a visual screen as well as our regular push buttons as well. So I think it's kind of neat what Kia's decided to do with this thing. I love the look of it. Down a little bit more, we do have the option for wireless charging in some trim levels of the vehicle, but the wireless charging pad isn't where you might think it is. So normally you'd kind of look right in front of the USB ports, but this one actually is hidden a little bit further back. It is kind of nice. It's kind of neat that it's hidden. And when you have a phone charging, there's a little indicator light letting you know that. So something to think about. Your phone may support it. You just have to dive in a little bit in order to see it. We've got a little handle along the side there as well. Moving down a bit, we've got a series of different drive modes. So we've got our normal, smart, or our sport mode, and each mode is going to do something different. Now, I always recommend keeping it in the sport mode, especially when you look at engines that don't have too much power to them, and even the 1.6 turbo. And the reason why is because that's going to hold the RPMs a little bit higher. It gives it a much sportier feel as you're driving, so definitely recommend keep it in that sport mode. If you're looking for something where you don't necessarily care about the power, we can switch it into the eco mode instead, so that's smart mode, and that's going to keep things a little bit, it's not going to rev it quite as high. It's more for that, I just want to get from A to B. I'm in no rush. That's really what you're looking at there. Moving down, we've got our shifter knob. We've got our basics like our park, reverse, neutral, drive, but we can also flip it over for our standard mode. So we can go up and down between gears if we want to. So that's kind of neat. And one of the cool things is that we can also shift that on the fly. So as you're driving, you want to get a little bit more of a sportier performance, drop it into our smart mode, into our shifter mode, and then we can go up and down as necessary. And then flick that back up from there. Now, at a minimum, this thing is also going to have at least heated seats. Now I say at least heated seats because this thing also has the option for ventilated seats, which in the summertime, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I love the ventilated seats. And it is just a switch down here, so we can go between either our cooled or our heated seats. If your car doesn't have the heated seats, it's just going to show the heated button there at a default. And as I said, you're at least going to have heated seats. Down a little bit more, this one also does have the heated steering wheel, and it's the heated wheel all the way around, so great during winter time. Off to the other side, we've got our all-wheel drive lock, so definitely, it's kind of cool. I love the fact that Kia's got that all-wheel drive lock, because otherwise it's an intelligent all-wheel drive. So the vehicle's automatically going to flip us out between power in each wheel, depending on what it recognizes that we need, or we can permanently lock it out to that four-wheel drive if we wanted to. Down a bit more, we also do have our controls for our passenger seat, same thing, heated and ventilated, and then we've got a hill descent control, so a downhill brake control button. Now what that's going to do is if we're going downhill and we're doing more technical driving, like think off-roading, things like that, it's going to keep us at a set speed. So we literally only have to worry about driving with the steering wheel, and the vehicle is going to keep us at that speed. So if you're going off-roading, just knowing that that feature is available. Down a bit more, we've got our electronic parking brake. You're going to pull up to turn it on, and you're going to press the brake and push down in order to turn it off. Down a bit more, we also have our auto hold setting. So the auto hold setting is an interesting one because when we shift the car into drive and we take our foot off the brake, it's literally going to hold us into place. As we move down a tiny bit more, we do have a few cup holders, and then we've also got another little storage space. Into the actual armrest, we do have a little bit of storage space in there as well. No additional ports inside of this thing, but in front of the shifter, we have we've got a 12-volt power point, and then we've got 2 USB ports as well. We've got one USB port for power, and the other one if we're going to be hooking a phone up for Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. As we start to move up overhead, auto dimming rear view mirror in this trim level of the vehicle. It might be a manual flip instead. Up ahead a little bit more, so we do have a few basics. So we've got our tow, we've got our SOS modes as well. This specific one does have the sunroof, and it's going to be the same sunroof if your vehicle is equipped with one. So it's a manual shade, and then we can vent this thing up, or we can easily open and close it if we want to. We've got our basic for our cabin control lighting there as well. And then we've also got our visor with our vanity mirror, and there is a light along the very top, which is nice. We've got a business card holder in there as well. We can click this thing out and extend it if we need to block some more sun, which I think is always a great feature to have. Now, this sunroof is nice. Like, at the end of the day, it's not a full panoramic, but if you're a fan of at least having a sunroof, we've got that option. Oh yeah. All right, folks, now time for the fun part. Let's take this thing out for a spin and see how it handles. So a couple things. I am going to make sure that I am in sport mode. All right, drive mode sport, which is going to be so nice. And that's one thing to think about, especially when you're in a vehicle that doesn't have an engine that's super powerful. When we get into the sport mode, it's going to hold onto those gears longer, so it gives you a sportier performance. Let's figure out what that feels like. It's the raw power of the 2-liter 4-cylinder engine. For the engine size, like, I'm not gonna fault it there. It's okay for what it is. Like, it's a 2-liter naturally aspirated engine. I wasn't really expecting it to be something crazy, but it is nice to know, like, if you're just looking for a car, you just wanna get A to B, whatever the case may be, it's a good option. It's comfortable, but one thing, yeah, it's fairly comfortable. I did notice that inside of the Sportage, the actual headrest was a tiny little bit more comfortable though, so gonna be a matter of preference there, but this thing is nice. Feature-wise is good. Head space, a ton of space, which is nice because I'm taller at the end of the day. When it comes into the actual seat, there are a few different options for the seat itself. So you've got the option for either a cloth seat, pleather seat, leather seat, depending on the trim level you're in. It's kind of cool. I was test driving the Stinger a couple weeks ago, and that thing, the 22 Stinger, is amazing. Like, power-wise is great, but one of the cool features of it were the actual seats, surprisingly enough, because it had an option when you went into the sport mode, it actually curved the seats around your body, so it almost like it held you into your seat even more. It was really freaking cool. It almost as if you were in like another car with a Recaro seat, because the Recaro Sport seats are very tight seats. So that is what the Kia Stinger reminded me of, was those seats specifically. So I've got to figure this thing out when it's in the manual drive mode, what that is going to be like. All right, here we go. There it is, all right. So this thing pretty much has to redline to give you good power. So something to think about there, but it's not bad. Honestly, for what it is, for the engine size, it's pretty cool. And one of the nice things, I love the fact that we can change between the regular drive mode versus the sport mode as we go. So rather than having to sit there and kind of fiddle with things and come to a complete stop, we can just flip it over to that sport mode if we wanted to. Little roundabout. Not bad. Nimble little bugger. Okay, all right. A couple other things. I definitely have the cooled seats going right now as well, because it is a teeny bit toasty outside right now, but those cooled seats are really nice, and I am super surprised to see it inside of the Seltos. So, I mean, if you're a person, you enjoy some of those nice luxuries, it's cool to know that you don't have to worry about going to a premium brand. Like, you could look at just even the base Seltos. Like I said, I'm surprised that cooled seats are inside of this thing, but it's really nice. Heated at a minimum, cooled optional. Okay, I've got the lane keeping system on right now as well, so that should, in theory, it's keeping me right in my lane. That's so cool. So cool. Okay, I'm gonna kind of veer over and see what happens. Yeah, I veer over and like immediately it's like nudging me back into my lane. And then, okay, so my hands are literally off the wheel right now. Oh, well, I should say hovering over the wheel right now, but it is keeping me perfectly balanced between these two lanes with that lane keeping assist mode. That is really, really cool, Kia. Good job. Oh, that is so neat. I love cars with technology like this. Like, it is such a simple thing, but it is such a cool thing all at the same time. Quick and nimble. All right, little bit of the gas. All right, sport mode. Yeah, like I said, sport mode is definitely where it's at inside of this vehicle. Like, this isn't the 1.6 turbo. It's just the 2-liter naturally aspirated. But if the 1.6, like the power difference isn't too big between the two of them. So I definitely recommend, if you've got the SX turbo, definitely drive around in sport mode as well. You will absolutely notice a difference in the ride quality when you do. Well, folks, that was an in-depth look at the 2022 Kia Seltos. What did you think? I like this thing. It's cute, it's nimble, and it's at a good price point. If you have any questions, drop down in the comment section below and let me know. And until I see you next time, make sure you stay safe. The shifter knob is nice because we've got our shifter knob is nice. Nice. The shifter knob is nice, and the reason why